Years ago, I proclaimed that Silent Hill was pretty much a dead franchise, and that came from Konami making so many bad choices, from just misguided releases to weird farming out of the franchise like we saw with Silent Hill Ascension. I was one of the people who basically felt like this series was just done. And I'm glad that I was wrong, because with Silent Hill 2 Remake, I completely realized that Konami was trying to turn that wrong into a right, and they did it in a big way. And since then, I've been excited again for this series. And so when I saw Silent Hill F's teaser trailers and some of the gameplay trailers, I was getting incredibly excited for it. Excited enough that I decided that no matter what happened, I was going to pre-order this and get it day one. And so I picked up the day one edition. It was packaged with like a little extra from Amazon as well. I have a video on that if you're interested. But the day one edition, and I've been playing this game pretty much since. I've been obsessed with this game, and in this video, I'm going to go over some of the things that people have been talking about with Silent Hill F. Like, is this actually Silent Hill? And is the combat as bad as everyone else is saying? And overall, is this a good or a bad Silent Hill entry overall? So let's take a look. To start this off, I just want to emphasize that I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. However, I will give you a kind of basic Cole's notes of the story just to give context. But essentially, kind of like most other Silent Hill games, this game starts somewhat in a normal world, I guess is the best way to put it. And then the world starts to shift. So the main character, Hinako, ends up leaving home after having a fight with her drunk father, and that kind of sets the stage for the game. But for the first little bit, of course, it seems relatively normal, and then as she meets up with her group of friends, we see the world take a turn. Now, the biggest difference between this Silent Hill, and probably one of the most talked about differences, is that this game isn't set in the United States. This is actually set in 1960 Japan. And some people, this is kind of a polarizing thing, and it's kind of a knock against the game for some people. Me personally, I'm very welcome to this approach. I don't look at Silent Hill as having to be stuck in this mainline cult approach that's in some rural part of the United States. I myself don't see Silent Hill that way. I look at Silent Hill as a feeling, as a direction, as a sort of crafting of a game around this sort of bizarre tragedy that's happening to someone or others, shrouded in a bit of the occult as well as just the personal journey that that person's facing, if that makes sense. And so for me, going at this and looking at this as a American-only setting doesn't seem to really matter to me. I know for some people it does. And with that being said, it doesn't mean that because we're in a different country or different environment that this Silent Hill has lost its way. We still have the thick fog. We still have the bizarre character interactions. We still have the bizarre enemies. And this is something I want to emphasize. Probably my biggest critique of Silent Hill Downpour was that the game actually had some unique atmosphere and even an interesting world. The problem was the enemy design was awful. It just didn't feel like it was capitalizing on the bizarre or disturbing that I expect from Silent Hill. And I'm glad to say that in Silent Hill F, we get that. We get bizarre enemies again. And again, they're clearly inspired a little bit by Silent Hill 2, but they work for their world. And I think that this is something that I was very reserved about a bit, but I'm happy at how Neobards and Konami have executed this. These monsters and creatures seem disgusting and horrifying and disturbing and all the things I expect from a Silent Hill. So you pair that with the thick fog and the weird world, this feels like Silent Hill. And I also want to emphasize for anyone who's playing this, I was told by some people who I've already spoken to who kind of got the early release with the digital deluxe edition, this game plays best with headphones, and they're not wrong. The sound design in this game is incredible. It sounds incredibly Silent Hill, but it also seems influenced positively by the Japan of that era in a great way. And the sound design just ultimately, from the music, the ambiance, to the enemy gargles and noises, is top tier. This is, in my opinion, probably one of the best sounding Silent Hills. It's done incredibly well. And even the tonality of some of the music as it comes in and out between enemy encounters or cutscenes is done so well. And you combine that with the atmosphere, to me this game absolutely feels like a Silent Hill. Now, without kind of going too deep into that, I'm kind of emphasizing this because I'm seeing a kind of divisive split in the fan base of this game as to whether or not this is Silent Hill or if it isn't Silent Hill. Ultimately, this feels like Silent Hill, and it feels justifiably so, and it takes a lot of the elements that made other peak Silent Hill games successful and really does them well. Now, moving further into this, one of the things that a lot of people had, again, also been divisive on or was the combat. Now, I will say, starting out, after you get into some of the early encounters, it really took me a bit of time to get used to the combat. I would argue the combat is not great, but it's not bad either, and to some degree it's enjoyable, which to me is all I really want out of a Silent Hill. And you have a dodge mechanic, which seems incredibly easy to use. However, you are restricted by a stamina meter, so if you spam your dodge, you go through your stamina meter, and if you lose stamina, you leave yourself vulnerable to getting hurt by enemies. However, if you can get your timing down right and you can dodge at the correct instance, you actually maintain your stamina, and it allows you the opportunity to attack. With the actual attacks, you really only have heavy and quick in terms of your hits. And these, for the most part, what I like about them, they feel meaty when you get your heavy attack pulled off. Feels like there's weight to your attack. Now, this will feel different for people who are big fans of Silent Hill 2 Remake, which feel pretty streamlined. This really does feel like a high school girl trying to swing a big pipe or trying to swing a knife, right? It doesn't feel like you have this strong young man swinging. It feels relatively almost like you're disadvantaged. But again, that is part of the survival horror of Silent Hill. So the combat itself, I get why some people don't like it, especially if you're coming off of Silent Hill 2. And I also want to highlight, there's no firearms at all, not that I understand. There's only melee weapons. So for me, once I got used to the dodge and got used to understanding how that influenced my stamina, and once I got used to being able to figure out some of the enemy types with my heavy and light attacks, I actually started to enjoy the combat ultimately. The other thing is, one of the things that I thought was unique about this Silent Hill that I'm very open to and I actually like is there are some light RPG elements. So you have the ability to upgrade your health, upgrade your stamina. You also have the ability to repair weapons, which are breakable, by the way, but you seem to find enough of them as you go through the environment. So you seem to have a lot of these different these different attributes that you can add. I myself basically got as much stamina as I could, and you get charms, for example. I'm not going to say the name right, so I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce it, but essentially I'm going to call them charms that you can also, that also temporarily boost, or sorry, not temporarily, but do boost abilities overall. So that, I use like a stamina charm as well as upgrading my stamina, and maybe that's why I'm enjoying the combat more, because I don't feel ultra disadvantaged, but I feel like there's still a bit of a challenge there, and it just feels more enjoyable to be able to dodge around and swing and kind of move into the next area. Which leads me to my next point. One of the things I've been hearing online from some people is that, one of the problems with Silent Hill F is there's too much combat, and I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that statement. I understand previous Silent Hill games, Silent Hill 2, for example, the old one. You were in a position where combat encounters weren't, this massive thing. They weren't always happening every other room, but they were there. The thing is, though, you were also highly restricted in your style of combat. For the most part, in the original Silent Hill 2, felt kind of archaic, so the pacing of combat made sense. This Silent Hill, you have a bit more volition and movement over your encounters, so I'm not going to say that the combat feels overdone. I did feel like the first couple encounters felt like they were stacked on top of each other, but as I progress through the game, I don't feel like it's overdone. I feel like there's enough of them and they're placed intelligently enough to kind of complement the areas you're in or add tension or fear into rooms that you're exploring. So I'm not sure that's necessarily a something that I consider a problem with the game. The other thing I want to highlight as well is that I've read a couple reviews on the game from some of the people who had early releases, and a couple of the reviews stated that, the game is all risk, no reward when it comes to combat, which again to me is not true. And I'm going to say that flat out. It's not true. It's not, there's all risk and no reward in the terms of this isn't Resident Evil 4 where you shoot an enemy and you can pick up a rare gem or pick up a, ammo or weapons. That's, this is a different style of game, so I think that's not a fair comparison as some reviewers had highlighted this, and I think that's silly. There is reward. If you are like me and you like exploring every nook and cranny of the environment, yeah, you're going to get in combat encounters, but almost every single time I've done that and I get through a combat encounter, there's either health or there's an item that I can exchange at shrines to help upgrade my health or stamina. So is reward. There is obviously risk, but there is reward here as well. So as far as the combat goes, and as far as the risk versus reward, yes, there are some encounters that can definitely be avoided, to get from point A to point B. But if you're like me and you want to explore different areas or houses or rooms that maybe are off the beaten path and you do have encounters, there tends to be a reward following. So now, lastly, the thing I really want to go over is ultimately, is this a worthwhile Silent Hill game? And my opinion is, based off of everything I've played, and I want to emphasize I'm about halfway through and I'm understanding that there's multiple playthroughs that really change as you progress through them, but I'm about halfway through my first playthrough, and I'm going to be forward in that this is giving me the same high level of excitement that the Silent Hill 2 remake did. And I held that game in incredibly high regard. You can watch some of my videos from around this time last year about it. That game was, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, most recent Silent Hill release that we've seen. And I know the bar's pretty low, but it was generally one of the best survival horror games overall that I've played in very recent times. And Silent Hill F so far is shaping up to be the same. And between the atmosphere, the sound design, enemy design, storyline, the combat, the upgradable abilities, this game feels like it's a strong contender to be just as good as the Silent Hill 2 remake. So if you're like me and you're a huge fan of this series, or you're just generally a big fan of survival horror, I think there is a ton that you'll get out of this game that you will truly appreciate. So for those of you who have played it or beat it or are playing it again, leave a comment below and let me know what your thoughts are on Silent Hill F, because I'm right now absolutely obsessed and I'm very excited to progress through the story and learn more about this world. So let me know what you think. And for anyone else who's on the fence about it, I highly recommend picking up a copy of this game.